was unbelievable, really, the way the goals were going in. What you want at the end of a season is well, you want to win, obviously, and it was just the game before that suddenly the relegation fears were lifted, and what a difference it made.
It was a typical end-of-season game. It meant a lot to Everton, obviously, because European qualification was what they were looking for. They only needed a point; they got 3. But for Newcastle, it was end-of-season fair.
I thought it was a decent game of football, but I think that it was played at probably a lesser tempo than it would have been if there'd been something at stake for both sides. I think it was quite a relaxed game, quite enjoyable, and a bit of a novelty for Sunderland fans to to watch a game where there was nothing at stake at the end of the season.
Gareth's obviously had a bit of an up and down season, but what would you give him a mark out of 10 for?
It's difficult, but I think I would have to say something like 6, actually. And I think we could have done something. We could have done something quite special this season, but we allowed ourselves to fall down into the relegation fight.
-10 for Big Sam, obviously. I think he just wasn't big enough for the job, contrary to what he believes. As far as Kevin Keegan's concerned, 10 out of 10. Bordering probably on 11 out of 10, because to turn the team, from playing atrocious football into the attractive football we've been seeing over the last few weeks, and to get them from what was a relegation battle into mid-table safety, fantastic.
I think I would give him 8 out of 10. I think he achieved the primary objective, which was like to stay in the Premiership. I think that's going to give us a base to build for the future. Some of his signings worked, and some of his signings haven't worked, as I think he'd be the first to acknowledge. I also think he was very unlucky at the start of the season to be without the likes of Kieran Richardson and Carlos Edwards. I think they've made quite a difference when they've come back, giving us a bit more balance.
Best player this season who's really impressed you?
Well, he's a homegrown lad, Stuart Downing. He finished the season with a brace, a fantastic volley, but all season long he's been superb.
Happy Bear. I don't think there's anybody else who has come close. For somebody who has moved to the northeast, and he's you come into the Premier League, it's notorious for players to come in and struggle to adapt. He's been absolutely fantastic.
Danny Collins has probably been one of our best players. It's not to say I wouldn't replace him as a left back. I think he's a great defender. Whether he's good at going forward, that's another thing, but I think that's a bit harsh. I think he's come on leaps and bounds, and I think for pure persistence, I'd give him player of the season.
Up until the Man City game, the high point was obviously there was a couple, but probably beating Arsenal at home was a fantastic, pulsating performance, because at that time Arsenal were way ahead of everybody else in the league, and we really turned it on that day.
It's always beating Sunderland, as a Newcastle fan, you want to beat Sunderland, The lowest point was the game that we played at the stadium, the 1-1 draw. It was just horrendous. Sunderland should have won that game.
I think the high point of the season is like an overall thing, just actually being in the Premiership. It's much more enjoyable going to games when you're competing against the best. Single moment probably when Danny Higginbottom scored against Newcastle in the home game. And as far as the lows go out, maybe the likes of Everton away and Newcastle away were probably the two lows. But overall, it's been enjoyable.